I like your book collection, dude.
Oh yeah, it's just Preso Meaningful. It's all bullshit. I read like 1% of that shit.
Dude, I was just telling this dude like my
I'll
entire
start
life,
reading them,
dude.
but like the oh go ahead, what were you saying?
Oh no, I'm just saying, like, dude, I'm 36 years old now, dude, and like I read like I think I've officially read 3 books from start to finish my entire life, dude.
Dude,
Oh
to
Like,
this
wow.
day, like the best book I ever read was Snoop Dogg's autobiography.
yeah, that includes like high school, like forced material. You got to read this to graduate, and I'm like, no, dude, I'm not
So
doing it.
so I've worked in social work, and I've actually read some studies about books and people who read. So just to ask you some random questions and just see if it like turns out. Did you ever watch your parents read?
No,
Okay, that's the pretty much it.
yeah. No, the funny thing about that is my parents used to read to my sisters.
Mm-hmm.
My sisters had a big old library of like all the Disney books growing up, and everything turned out alright for my sisters. Like my sisters were overachiever, super. But when I was born, my parents were like, you know, just the economy changed or something, Reaganomics. I have no idea, but like they became like hard working, like from the moment they woke up to the point they went to bed, and like I was kind of that generation of kids that just I was raised by television, and
Yeah.
so like reading kind of went out the window.
So you're gonna have to pull the mic
Oh
towards
my
you
bad,
whenever you
dude.
talk.
So yeah, like reading just reading went
You can
out.
tighten this top part and it'll tighten it.
Let me
It's
do
pretty
that.
sturdy. If it feels like it's not gonna break.
This right here.
I always tell people it's not gonna break. Up here on the top, this
Up
metal,
here?
this
Oh.
metal twisty thing, it'll tighten. It'll loosen up every time you kind of move it around,
Oh,
and so it just when you find that spot you wanted to stay at, you just twist
So
it.
both of us do it like that side?
Yeah, you just
Okay.
have to pull it.
Anyways,
Yeah, well-
yeah. So that was, they started working a whole ton, and so being raised by my 2 older sisters who didn't read to me. They were doing their schoolwork, and I was just being raised by Ninja Turtles and Batman and whatever was on TV. Like reading was secondary. Reading wasn't that important, and like somehow, some way, like made it through like public school with reading very little, and like still like to this day like English. Oh, and English was like pretty much like a second language to me too. So just like even that, like here's
Your
another.
Spanish speaking parents. So were your sisters? I feel like this audio is a little.
Is it all? I can't hear it. I don't know.
No, no, I think
Sounds good
it's
to me.
fine. I think it's fine. I'm just tripping.
You can always like amplify it afterwards. That's what I do with
Yeah,
us.
yeah, I'm just tripping. So I was gonna say, so like all that energy they were putting into your sister, do you think was it showing for them when you were growing up? Like was it saying like oh were they like oh investing all this time? They're like oh we're seeing like the produce of it, like the whole outcome of like investing this time, or they were like fuck are we wasting our time? And then maybe they were like on a curve and then they did well.
No,
They
I mean,
fucked it, like they fucked it up for you.
well, the funny thing is like when I got to like elementary, like they became very hands off with all of us. Like they just expected us to do the right thing, and like they were, I mean, they were still involved. Like they were still in the picture and everything, and they cared about our grades and they looked at our grades. But it's not like they ever sat down and like did homework with us and like went through like things like that. At this point, my sisters already had a very like strong structure in their routine and how they did it, and they're both like had great grades and became very successful. And not that I'm like some like bum or anything like that, but like for me it was like
Well, one sister is a lawyer and the other sister is like Charles Manson's former psychologist and shit.
yeah, like she's like top of the like they're both top of the game in what they do. So like it took me a while to be like, well, like it ain't gonna be that. So like now that I've read like 3 books,
You're like I can do it.
I can catching up a little bit. So like we're one step closer to like
You're like
interviewing the new Charles.
It's like
Manson.
the Samsung Health app and shit. You're like looking at everybody else, and you're like, yeah, I'm like 5 billionth.
Yeah.
I'm in 5 billionth place now and
Yeah.
shit. Like, maybe if I just keep reading. My father, random shit. My parents were old as fuck. My mom was 41 and my dad was 50
Oh wow.
when I was
Wow.
born, and so I grew up. My dad retired the whole time, so he was always like super chilling all the time. So I'm always chilling, and I don't like to work. Like I work all the time. I go and do my 9 to 5 and shit. Went to school and everything, but I don't like it. Like I'd rather just be chilling all day watching Matlock and Murder She Wrote and shit, you know.
And Golden Girls.
And Golden Girls,
Oh, hell
and
yeah.
also my dad, because he was retired, he was always reading, and so I always saw him reading, and he collected books, and he collected apparently, from what he told me, that's one thing, as you grow up you realize your parents told you all kinds of bullshit.
Yeah.
And so one of the things was he was telling me that my older siblings, he wanted to make sure they were educated, and so that's why I'm laughing, because like he put in a lot of effort, and like they're all housewives and military and shit, like they just did not take any responsibilities. And so so he had all these like National Geographic books. So like growing up, like if I wanted to read a book, I didn't have to go to the library with everybody else and get the little kids books, which I didn't really understand. They were little kids books. They were just like the section that they told us to get books from. So that's where we got books from when we were at school. But at home, my dad had all these like National Geographic, Reader's Digest, encyclopedias, all kinds of shit, just collections of shit that he had for my older siblings who never fucking fucked with it. And I was always bored, and I was kind of a homebody, and I still am. So I would just sit there and grab books, and I would read these books. And then when I would go to school, people always like, you're always fighting, you don't pay attention, you don't do no homework, but you always get good grades. Like you on my test, I was score high. But oh fuck, I went on a tangent because I started thinking about something else. But
No, by all means.
but yeah, I don't know, something about books. Oh, so because I always read the books, and I read adult books, and I didn't realize it. So like my testing was always really high. So like when I was like in fourth grade, they wanted to put me in, like, I'm all bragging about myself. They put me in this like GATE program, and random shit, because we're gonna talk about, you know, the stuff you guys talk about too. So when the OJ trial was going on, this is when I was like, my school was like calling my dad in. It was like, look, he don't behave, like he don't do no assignments, he doesn't do no class participation, but for some fucking reason his reading is like in 12th grade level and his math is in 10th grade level, but he's in 4th grade. Like this shit is like, what the fuck? And so my dad signed the paperwork for me to join this program, and I remember not wanting to go because I was like, these fucking little white boys who like always get on my nerves, always like saying racist shit, like I'm gonna have to hang out with them now because they're all in those classes. And so I turned in the paperwork to my teacher, and she goes, people like you don't deserve to be in this program. And so then she just was like, and your dad didn't sign it correctly, so I can't submit it. And I'm like, but I need your signature so I can give it back to the principal so I can get in the program. And she goes, well, I'm not signing it because your dad didn't sign it correctly. And I was like, well, I'll just take it to him to sign. And she goes, no. And I was just like, what the fuck? And I was just so like,
What school is this?
it was just Riverside area and shit.
Okay.
And so it was Miss
Sounds like Colonel Nichols.
Miss Luptowitz, fool. Miss Luptowitz, shit. She's probably dead by now. But so I never got in that program. But the whole point of that thing was like, I think I was like a weird curve, right? So like I got this like extra start because like my dad had this setup, but then I never read really after that. Because I got into high school and I got into like hanging out with my friends, being on the street and doing all kinds of shit, just being bad, getting in fights and gang fights and brawls and shit. And so, like, I think going even into like probably college, I was still ahead of like the reading of people that I knew.
Yeah.
So I never bothered reading like for a long, like I would read like philosophy books and stuff like that.
Goddamn.
But like yeah, I always like we would have discussions in class about like World War One or two, and I would be able to like talk about like the events of like the Black Hand and this and that. They'd be like, "Wow, you're very knowledgeable." Like older people would tell me, "You're very knowledgeable." Shit, and I was like, I just like my dad's old.
Was history like a favorite subject of yours, or?
No, not really. I never my subject. I like reading like you know what? I guess that would be history because I do like reading nonfiction.
Yeah.
Things that just kind of are true.
Sorry, I don't mean to hog the microphone,
okay.
but like, I think for me, like,
I'm gonna have to get another microphone. I already know.
No,
There's a couple other people that I'm inviting, and they're all groups of two, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna have to get another microphone.
just like the one subject that always like kept me from like being like, dude, I'm a fucking idiot, was always like I scored really well every time I was like in a history class or political science class or anything like that. And I think because it was all just like all you have to do is remember the story, like, and that for me was easy. Like that was like, of course, like, you know, just remember the story. That's what we do now. Like even when we do episodes now, like Jacob will show up with like pages and like have all these like detailed things, and for me it's like, oh dude, I just have to remember like Jeffrey Dahmer, dude, he like stabbed all these people, and like in my head it just comes together, like it just like it makes sense at the last minute. Like it's just like, okay, cool, I can figure my way through this because I remember the story pretty well, and I like movies, I like that sort of thing. Never really got into books. It seems like it would be a no-brainer to get into books because a lot of it's story based, but like history was always just like, oh dude, like this happened and this happened and this happened. It's easy to remember that. I don't have, it's not like remembering the quadratic formula or anything like that. So like
My brother's actually
Yeah.
my brother's actually, he doesn't read at all, like at all. At the most he'll read like a Maxim magazine or some shit, you know, like that's the most reading he does, is like reading up the looking at the chick's name, you know, to like get her IG.
I was about to say, like, there's no reading a Maximum magazine. You just look at the pictures, man. You put that shit in the front in the front of the bathroom stall. You just do that, but
under a pillowcase.
yeah.
Would you, so Jacob, do you do a lot of research
Oh yeah, but
more than art?
yeah,
Yeah.
It's weird because our research is probably very different.
yeah. Well, it's more out of like accepting your role, like in the podcast. And I think like early on, like we're best friends, but like when it comes to like putting on a show or whatever, that friendship dynamic kind of changes a little bit, where it's just like, okay, like you were asking questions about like the show, like I'm more of like the technical behind the scenes kind of thing, and I would say this, like Art's more of the personality, and you got to defer some of your personality so that way he shines, because that's what's best for the show. And like for me, it's just like, okay, if Art's just gonna remember like the new the outline of the story and give it personality, and like that's the funny aspect, that's what's best for the show. And if my role has to be, okay, I gotta, you know, insert like, you know, the nuances and like, okay, on this date and this guy's name and whatnot, like to help support that, then that's what I'll do. Because we're both like really big into sports.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say this at work too.
Yeah,
like,
you guys do have those like random sports episodes and stuff about the seasons.
yeah, and to me, like I just got done watching the documentary about the Redeem Team on Netflix, and they were talking about how like certain players were like, yeah, on the Heat, like I'm the 30 points a game scorer and whatnot, and you know, but on the Redeem Team, my role wasn't to be that guy. I had to be the guy that played defense. Like Chris Bosh was like, my role was just like, hey, I'm just gonna play defense. I'm just gonna be there to help support Kobe and, you know, Dwayne Wade and whatnot. And that's how like I got, like I've learned over the years, where it's just like we can't be competing like who's gonna be the funnier guy, because like then we're gonna butt heads kind of thing, and that like the product's not gonna be as good. Even though like you go into it like, well, it's a comedy podcast, we both got to be funny. But if we're gonna pick topics where it's something serious like Jeffrey Dahmer, right? Like he's got to be able to give it the personality, because that's where he shines. That's where he's going to be the strongest at. And I'll admit it, he's funnier than I am, you know, whatever, right? But like with me, like how it is with like how I grew up, where it's very much, it was kind of like in between what you guys were saying. But my mom was very much like, you get 100% on all your spelling tests. You make sure your math test comes home. It's 100%. Everything had to be 100%. And if I wasn't 100%, like that was an ass whooping. So there's always like that anxiety of like, well, fuck, if Joe Rogan listens to this podcast, or, you know, any big podcast listens to this, like it's always my anxiety of like, okay, is this right? Is this right? Kind of thing. So it's kind of like that. My child abuse coming to light kind of thing, where it's like I got to make sure everything is perfect, because I don't want to get like a figurative ass whooping kind of thing. So
I had a friend that he would get his ass whooped like for not having good scores.
Yeah,
like they would whoop his ass. He had like he grew up in foster care, but through his grandparents, because his mom unfortunately like couldn't care for him. And then he said like his grandfather would fuck him up, bro. And so he he would just not want an ass whip, and so like if he fucking struggled with something, like he just knew that he was gonna push through and learn that shit.
Yeah.
And so he would push through, and he would, you know, and it was fucked up because like let's say he finishes off. I'm laughing at him. So he finished his homework or something, and he got good at the subject. They wouldn't be like, "Oh, he's doing well." They would be like, "Okay, on to the next subject." So he kind of was like
Same
shooting
here.
himself in the foot. Like there was no like end of like he was having to push himself. So he said like he said school was like super easy for him. He was like the like on the government board. Like he just had fun through high school because he never had to really do homework because he already knew all the subjects. He was ahead of everybody.
Oh wow.
And so he said he was always having like a really easy time in school, but like nobody knew like that when he went home, like he'd get these fucking ass whoopings and shit
Yeah.
for like random shit.
Oh yeah.
And the way he talks about it is like so fucking hilarious, bro. So fucking hilarious. One time I was at his house and I needed a shower, and he was like a particular guy that he would just have extra stuff. So he was just like, "Hey, yeah, man, if you need like some extra clothes, if you need blah blah, you know, I have that. And then here's a towel." And then he's like, here's those. It's not a rosebud thing. It's not a loofah. The loofah is like a sponge thing, but this is like that plastic knotted up shit.
Oh wow.
And so like I forget what it's called. But anyways, he gave me one of those, and he gave me some body soap. And then I was just like, "Oh, thanks, man." And then he's like, "Yeah, man, don't be using that fucking bar shit, bro. It fucks up the tiles." And I was just like, it's just like a random shit to say, you know? But the way he said it, like he just said it with passion, and I was just like, what the fuck? And so like I waited until like later on when we were like cool, and I was just like, "Hey, man, like, tell me more about this fucking up the tile thing." He's like, "Yeah, man, my grandpa used to fuck me up, bro, because I would fucking leave the soap up there, and it would like fuck up the tile, bro." And so like I just started getting body soap after that shit.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh, this was
Dude, that's
all
some shit.
traumatized."
That's some shit. That's weird, dude. Like me and your friend would probably get along great because that's some shit my mom would do too. Because like she has like little quirks like that. Like even like living with my girlfriend now, like I'll have like certain things that pop off like that where it's just like, "Hey, don't do that. Like you're gonna fuck up the table," and like it's a glass table or whatnot. Like you make sure you use a coaster, or you born on a barn or whatever. Like my mom comes out at me and shit. She's like, "Relax. Like we have Windex. I'll fucking wipe it. Like don't worry about it. It's not fucking mahogany wood from fucking Egypt or some shit. Like you need to like slow your roll." But it's like that. Like everything has to be perfect at all times, kind of thing.
That's hilarious.
Environment like I grew up in.
He and I think it kind of pushed his confidence. His confidence was like super high because he had learned to like work through situations. So he ended up, when I met him, I was probably like 20 or something, maybe even younger than that. Maybe he's like 19 or something, but he was in his mid 30s at that time, and he had come back to after, you know, whatever's going on in his life, and he decided to go back to school. And so it had affected him. He was so confident in going to nursing school that one day we were in a situation where I got like this random call with this dude threatening me from like work. I guess this girl had said that had boned her or some shit, and then like her husband was calling me and like threatening me, talking about he's gonna shoot me, and I was just like, "Bro, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I don't know what the fuck is going on here." And she's like crying in the back. I could hear her crying. And I was just like, "Dude, I gotta work with this fucking bitch." And like, what the fuck is going on here? And so I was like, "Bro, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what the fuck she told you. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about." And you know, I could hear her crying in the background. So I'm gonna go ahead and hang up and just say that, you know, I hope you didn't whoop her ass for nothing, because I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So I just hang up. And then he calls me back, and the dude's like, "I know where the fuck you live. I'm gonna fucking kill you." And so I hang up, and then I'm just looking at my friend. We had just been drinking. And so he was like, I was like, "Hey, bro, you want to get the fuck out of here and just go drink somewhere else, man? I don't feel like being here, man. This guy's talking about he knows where I live. He's gonna come kill me or some shit." He's like, "Bro, if you get shot, I can keep you alive."
Oh god.
I was like, this was fucking crazy.
That is
But he
confidence
was so
too. Yeah.
confident of like, fuck, if he shoots you, I'll keep you alive, bro. No.
Well, maybe he's not that good of a friend because he's gonna let you get shot to that point.
Okay, so let's flash forward to, I think it was it the same night? I had this ex. We had broken up, and it was those situations where you're kind of young, you don't realize it until like you get older. So my brother had given me some advice, and I ignored him. He's like, if you're not with her no more, just like break it off. Just break it off. Don't sleep with her no more. Don't meet up with her. Don't say hi. Don't nothing. So I was like, all right. And so she would like come over to my place like at like early 4 a.m. or some shit every once in a while, and I just be like, fuck it, whatever. I'm not listening to my brother. And so then I hook up with this random chick, and then I'm there, and this fool's asleep on the couch. He's knocked out, and next thing you know, freaking, oh, man, I don't know how it is, but damn, it's the same bitch too. I'm having double thoughts here.
Damn.
So the same girl, she's like, I could feel her looking at me, bro. Like I was sitting there banging this other chick, and I'm gonna cut this out.
You might want to write that down right there.
So I'm sitting there. So I'm sitting there boning this chick, and then I'm like, what the fuck? I feel like someone's looking at me. So like I look over my shoulder, and I look over, and she's standing there, bro. And then she's not saying that. She's not saying nothing. She's just staring at me. And
So she was really there?
Yeah. She was watching.
Did she have like a house key or what?
Nah, I didn't lock my door. I just lived in a place where like it was a retirement. So it was a random story, but I was a kid living in a place for retired people.
Oh, okay.
Because my stepdad had this trailer where he lived, and then he had an extra one, and then I stayed there, and so I lived there, and so
It was the boneyard.
yeah, and it was like
Random
golf
chicks
course,
just be walking through your house
old
and
ass
shit.
ladies and shit. But anyways, so she's like standing there, and then like next thing you know, she fucking dips away, and the girl's like, when I turn to say something to that girl, the girl's already like dressed, and she's like, I need to get the fuck out of here. And I'm like, hey man, like that's not my girl, like it's not like that, but yeah, get the fuck out of here. She's crazy, because I knew she was crazy.
You'd be like, have you ever seen the movie Swim Fan?
I've never seen that movie. What's that about?
Oh, it's about like some girl that like hooks up with some jock, and then he's like a swimmer. Huh?
That's a random reference. I never heard of that movie.
Really?
No.
I don't know. Maybe it's a white person thing. I don't know, but wow.
But it's just a crazy. He's in a crazy situation.
yeah.
This reminds me of Seabiscuit.
Yeah.
Well, so anyways, I closed the door, right, because she's banging on the door, and she's like, because I think she was just in shock, and then when she like the gears kicked in, she was trying to shut the door, and she's like, I'm gonna kill that bitch. Let me get that bitch. And I'm like, what the fuck? We're not together. Like, what the fuck? You tripping? You came into my house. Like, you need to calm the fuck down.
Yeah.
And then there was this like, how they say, like the quiet before this quietness before the storm. This whole time, I guess my homie's not paying attention to a goddamn thing, and so I think he wakes up and he sees her grab the knife, and so he tries to come out and tell her like, put the knife down. She just, the next thing you know, bro, I just see a knife coming through the door, just. And I'm like, what the fuck? I trying to tell the girl to run, fool. She's already out the door, fool. Because I had two doors in my room, like one to get out of the house and one to go into the hall.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh shit, yeah, she's crazy. And she tried to stab me in my sleep too, like before that.
So this is why you came to Bakersfield, to get away from her, huh?
Everybody, I wanted to get away from everybody. Here, let me. I fucking forgot my phone. Oh, okay. So we'll jump into the conversation, and we'll talk a little bit about your guys' show. So I do watch. Like I said, like as I'm doing stuff, I'll listen. I'll go in and out, and sometimes it just kind of, I don't listen to anything, and so I'll be like 20 episodes behind or 5 episodes behind, and so then I just jump. But anyways, you guys talked about Ozuna. So I would imagine you guys did a lot about. Oh yeah, you didn't want to do it, and that's another thing. So you guys are always like in communication of like what you're willing to talk about, right? So that's cool.
Plus, you had to like go to Disneyland or something. And I was like,
don't remember what I was doing, but
You're in Hawaii.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
in
yeah,
Hawaii,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
you had
yeah,
this
yeah.
other random dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they're all people. I don't know if they're just your friends or they're people from with their own podcast. Because I know you guys have guests here and there. Especially in the beginning, you guys had like Jesus and who was the other guy?
Eric.
Maybe, yeah.
yeah.
But anyways, what was the point of my question? Oh, Ozuna. So the one topic that everybody always like jumps over and then just kind of leaves it at that was that in that interview, the 1,000 faces.
Oh,
of
a man with 1,000 faces.
A man with 1,000 faces. She talks about how he had a mentor, bro,
Oh yeah.
and nobody ever really talks about like what, is that a thing? You know, is that a thing that there's people like who murder and they know how to spot these individuals and they're like, hey, that fool's like, he's killed people or however they go. I don't know what kind of thought they have of like.
Jamie Asuma had a mentor. Oh,
Yeah.
Sorry, you're saying Jamie Asuma had a mentor?
Yeah, in one of the episodes, he talks about how he had met a man, and that man had like told him how to clean his body scene and shit, and like get rid of evidence and all that stuff. But what I started thinking was like, is this like some like a apprenticeship kind of shit that people do, and we're not really aware of it, you know? Like, and then how deep does it go? Does it go to where like these fools trust each other? It's like, you guys are killers.
I think we've done enough serial killer episodes now where you see the same patterns over and over. Jeffrey Dahmer, his dad showed him taxidermy. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, his uncle showed him like peeping Tom, very like prey-like mentality type of things. Every serial killer has that, like, if it's a man, they usually have a male figure in their life that they can look to and be like, I want to be like him, but the plus, whatever that may be. Like, this guy was a peeping Tom, this guy was a taxidermy guy, I want to take it to the next level type of thing. Those thoughts get planted in there. With Jamie Asuma, I listened to that podcast, The Man with a Thousand Faces. I haven't heard our own podcast about it, but so I don't know like what it's like, but like I think that apprenticeship element of it is something you see repeated in that, where Jacob's mom brought him to like become, got to make sure there's no rings on the table type of thing, like.
But his was different in that when you talk about like Dahmer or Richard Ramirez, like they definitely had like some type of like influence, and then you can say like they kind of took it to a whole other level, or like, hey bro, I was telling you how to like fuck with roadkill. I wasn't talking about
yeah,
minorities and all this shit, like that's a whole other thing. With this guy, they were talking about murdering people and how to get away with it.
I think with him, because like
imagination part.
I think with Jamie Asuna though, like, because I remember hearing that in the interview he did with Olivia LaVoice, and she asked him like, how did you get so good at it? Because you said like, with Jeffrey Dahmer, it was his dad by happenstance showing him how to be like a
military. Like there were multiple like little
yeah.
things.
But with Jamie Asuna, it was just like, okay, you were like this very like abused child, and then the parents weren't really there in the picture and whatnot. So like, how did you get to this point? I think with him, and it kind of gets glossed over because it's a very aside from Olivia LaVoice, it's a very under-examined case, is that he was in a gang for a while. I think it was...
yeah, and I think they talk about how he was just down to do shit.
Yeah, like I don't want to put too much of this out there just because it's like, I don't know how much of this I'm supposed to say, but somebody that I know who was a part of that gang during the time that he was a part of that gang basically said that like he was like the pit bull on the chain, like in a DMX video. They would send him out to do shit, and knowing the guy that I'm talking about, like they use people in those situations, and I'm thinking, and now this is just all theory or whatever, right? They already had a guy like that, and he was aging out of the gang. The guy that did the dirt. It's like the mafia, basically.
They had a matrix chart and shit.
Yeah,
like
there was a flow chart.
This is what we got going out. We need something coming in.
But it's very much like the mafia, the Cosa Nostra structure, where it's just like, okay, like, we can't have this guy doing this type of work anymore because he's not as fast anymore. He's not, those holes that he's already filled all the holes that he can, on the orchards. And so he's probably like, okay, like this is the next guy in the gang that's going to be that guy within the system. And I think that's what it was, because in any successful gang, and let's face it, all the gangs here in Kern County, their main objective is to make money. And so it's all a drug thing, and you need killers in your system to be successful in that gang. So I think it was when he talks about like a mentor, that's where my mind went, where it was just like, oh, okay, it's like the mafia. There's, the wolf, like in Pulp Fiction or whatever. Like he makes shit go away. He makes problems go away, kind of.
So it wasn't more like another random.
I don't think it was like Dexter,
secret killer, like weird thing, like apprenticeship. It was more just like a higher up recognizing this kid is a pit bull. He don't give a fuck. Let's up his training, so that he can do other shit that we need to get done.
Correct.
And then if he goes off the rails and does his own fucking Apocalypse Now shit, like he's just sitting there fucking skinning fools in his cell and shit, then that's him. Just
that's on him. Yeah,
that's on him from the whatever he
Oh yeah, it's just that the gang, I think, just taking advantage of what's already there, kind of thing. They already probably had a guy like that, and like I said, like he was gonna be the new generation to carry on that work, kind of thing. But that's just my theory. I mean, we're gonna have to get Olivia LaVoice's fine ass to come down and do another interview to kind of get some of that shit out of him. But
She got the fuck out of town, huh?
oh yeah, Seattle, yeah.
Art. Why? So why is there certain episodes you didn't want to cover the topic? Because I know it seems like you utilize when he's out or one of the other one is out to cover a topic with somebody. Not that you do it all the time. But I've caught that you guys did.
There's some episodes. That was one. I think was it the Bakersfield 3 or whatever. Didn't you guys cover something like that?
Oh, the Lords of Bakersfield.
The Lords of Bakersfield. Just things that don't interest me, to be honest with you. Like, I straight up tell them, like, hey, this is a good opportunity for you guys to cover Chris Benoit's murder or whatever. Like, just like, because I'm not gonna be there. And it's seriously just that. Like, it's not like anything like, oh man, I know Jamie and it's gonna hurt me if I hear it. It's nothing like that. But it's just I just that one was cool though. The Jamie Asuma, like I would have wanted to be part of that, but I was just in Hawaii for that. So, but there's episodes that I'm just like, nah, I'm not gonna bring anything to this. Like, nothing serious to this. So,
is there an episode you done that kind of changed you, just like your perception of like your habits or something you do, or just kind of changed you because you're like, you know what, I didn't really thought about this shit, or
yeah, there's been a few episodes where I walk into it and Jacob was like, hey man, let's cover, X, Y, and Z. And then I'm like, I don't know, it's gonna be kind of lame. And then we do it, and I'm like, dude, this is like riveting, funny, like one of my favorite episodes. And then vice versa, there's been episodes where I'm like, dude, this is gonna be like, dude, we're gonna cover, whatever, and then we're gonna kill it. And then we walk out of there, and we're just like, oh man, like we both kind of know, like it wasn't our finest work, and it's just, you just know. I'm sure you've done plenty of episodes where you just know, like, not my best work, not my most memorable thing. People weren't gonna be doing, like, writing to us about this down the line type of thing. When we did what's the one that we got like a lawsuit over? I can kind of tell, like, it's probably not in Jacob's wheelhouse, but I was like, let's just do it, like let's give it a shot. And the fact that like weeks down the line it became what it became, and like it became part of the mythos of probably shouldn't be saying her name, but
I'm gonna figure out how to
just like bleep that part. You could say it, but just bleep out the name or whatever, or at least the last name. But it became like
it's one of these. I don't know which one it is. Oh, he can't hear it.
Oh, yeah, I can't hear it.
I was trying to find the. There's somewhere on here. I don't know what the fuck. There's supposed to be a button
just
here.
Say it, because I mean,
yeah. So yeah. I mean, it's not like I regret it. I just don't want your show to get pulled or anything. But
just don't put it
so they just don't want their name being said on the internet.
It's a weird. It's on the YouTube, but it's not on the audio for whatever reason. But just watch that YouTube to get it, because it's a whole, like, just to explain it to you would take an hour. But it's one of those like weird internet lore things where,
yeah, and I feel like I bring a lot of those where I'm like, dude, I kind of want to give Stairways in the Woods a shot, and then that's another one where you got to push Mafia down the line kind of thing, where it's like Jacob's like, I've been trying to cover Mafia for a while, dude. like we're doing Pavement McCord and Stairways in the Woods, and like just things that would be kind of disposable and dumb episodes. But I feel like and sometimes I'm scared because I'm like, dude, this might be dumb, and like Jacob might be like, dude, I found like only like one article online, and it might blow up in our faces. But they've been some of my favorite episodes, or Jacob will bring something and it'll be like, dude, that was really interesting. Actually, just the other day when we were coming up for ideas in our Halloween episodes, what's the one for the Queen? Bathory, yeah. So like that's an episode, it'll come out sometime this month. But I was like, dude, that's perfect. Like I would have never thought of covering that, but it's gonna get covered here in a few weeks or so. I'm not sure when, but definitely like that's like the good thing, that's like he's definitely thinking of Halloween in a certain way that I'm not thinking of Halloween in that way. And I don't know, it's a good relationship on that end.
Yeah, it's definitely like a yin and a yang kind of thing. Like you hit it the mark on the nail on the mark. Like I would have like covered Jeffrey Dahmer like episode 10, and I feel like we wouldn't have been as strong on episode 10 to cover Jeffrey Dahmer. Whereas Art's like, nah, let's wait for the right time. And when we covered Jeffrey Dahmer, it was the right time because you had the Netflix fucking show come out. We're as good as we're gonna get like at covering stuff. We're like, I'm gonna do, you know, probably too much research, and he's gonna bring like the human element into it, and it's gonna be very entertaining but informative kind of thing. So he's good in that respect. But then you also pick stuff that I never would have known about or thought about, which makes it interesting for me because like everybody knows like, you know, conspiracies like the moon landing or JFK, like the magic bullet and shit like that. And that's where like my mind goes, like when I hear conspiracy theories. But Art's like, dude, there's this thing popping off on the internet right now, and it's called QAnon. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, is this like Queer Eye for the Straight Guy or something? And so you look at it and you're like, oh, that's crazy. And then it fast forward like a year and a half down the line, these QAnon fucks are like storming the Capitol. I'm like, damn, this fool was like on top of it from like day one. So there's that aspect of it. But then on my aspect of it, I bring like a whole different world where like he kind of mentioned it. Like I'm pretty big like into pro wrestling and like things like that and like obscure like comedy shit and whatnot. So we kind of like come together like butt cheeks in that regards, where it's just like there's two different worlds that come together, and it kind of makes the show what it is kind of thing. It's never a dull moment, and we got like this episode list that is just eternal. And I guess we're just gonna keep doing this podcast until we're in our 60s, because it's like there's never a shortage of shit that we could cover. Like we were even talking about it last week, or we still haven't covered John Wayne Gacy, who's like one of the most craziest serial killers, and that's in the pocket somewhere. You know, like that's another ace in the hole. Like, you know, anybody else probably would have already covered it, you know, like 5 years down the line.
I do think that. Yeah. I do think that a lot of podcasts kind of blow their load early and like end up having to cover like, you know, the history of shoes down the line, and it's just like, oh man, like I'm not trying to hear about the history of shoes. Like,
You're not gonna do it like a remastered or something, or you like you guys like the second time you talk about Jamie Osuna or something, because now there's more details. Or
we did QAnon 2, and I never thought we would have done when we did QAnon 1. When I pitched QAnon 1, like I would have never thought, hey, down the line we're gonna do QAnon 2. So maybe there might be like part 2 to episodes. That's always a possibility. It's really just like, if it's something I suggested, I'm always down for part 2. It's always just how Jacob feels about it, because there are times that I bring something and I'm like I'll give you an example. Another episode that's gonna got pitched to Jacob was this app called Randonautica, and it's totally random, and it's like, and it's something that's like happening kind of like in the internet, like in the background of what's going on with like people finding like random scary places in the world thanks to this weird app that people are downloading. And whether Jacob finds it interesting or not, I think that'll determine whether it ever gets a sequel to it. And so, because for me, it's like I'm already sold. I'm already like drinking the Kool-Aid or whatever. So like, or vice versa, I guess. Like if Jacob brings something and it's like, oh, dude, we're covering the Redeem Team. Well, what if we cover the 2004 team with like where they fell short with Allen Iverson and Tim Duncan type of thing? Like, I'm always down for that. Like, I'm always down to shoot this shit on sports. But, like, yeah, I guess everything has a potential for part 2. I don't know about remastered, though. I kind of like that there's, like, shitty quality episodes out there. Like, I like leaving those out there. But, yeah. I don't know.
Where do you guys want to take the podcast? Where would you like to see the podcast go?
It's more of a Jacob one.
Oh, you want me to answer this one first?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay, I guess.
I guess I'll take a stab at it, too. But
Yeah. Well, yeah. For me, like, I've always said this. Like, one of the primary reasons why I started the podcast was like a good way to stay like in touch with like my friends. Like, the early episodes, like you heard like a lot of like friends come through. Like your good friend Monica came through, our friend Greg, our buddy Ben. Like, and you hear us do like imitations of like another friend. Hey, dude, like. These are all inside jokes of like,
and they're hard to, because like sometimes I'm like, why does he make those voices sometimes? I'm like, what's that about?
And it's
At first
funny.
I thought it was like a Kermit kind of thing, and then after that I was just like, no, I think there's something more to that. And then I know you do it. Who does the Alex Jones?
Oh, we both do.
It goes back and forth. Okay, maybe that's why.
Okay,
But I'm
folks, let me tell you this right here. Yeah.
There's a lot of Alex Jones references. Probably like every episode.
Yeah. Whenever like there's like, and no offense to anybody who's Republican or conservative, but like whenever there's like oh that was a dumb like conservative train of thought, it's like that automatically it jumps to like Alex Jones or whatever, right? Or if it's like a pussy like I guess liberal or whatever, then it's like
whatever.
yeah.
Anderson. What is that dude's name? Something Tucker.
Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson.
Yeah. But like, I mean, we switch like whoever in our minds like comes to mind, like when we think of somebody like of those ilks, that's when we jump into it. But I mean, to go back to your question a little bit.
Yeah. No, don't worry. about it. We'll keep doing that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I do it all the time. I have random thoughts all the time, but it's a way to like stay in touch with friends, and it's like kind of like a way to like share shit with friends too. Like all those people that we have like hidden jokes about and whatever, like those people listen to the episode and like they'll text message me like, oh, why'd you have to say that or whatnot. I'm like, but it's like a cool inside joke. So in a way, it's a way to, as we get older, like I feel like friendships start to not fade, but like everybody gets busy with like their own lives, like as opposed to like when we were in our 20s, like going to Denny's at 2:00 in the morning or going to concerts or Dodger games or whatever, right? Like those things become further and further in between because like we live our own lives. Like I have a kid and he's got a girlfriend now, and like you know your lives become consumed with whatever else is in front of you. Like we work like big boy jobs now as opposed to like working at Target. So it is a way to like stay in touch with friends, and I very much want to keep the podcast that like a very like, all right, keep the people in our lives close by doing like, hey, let's have so and so on to talk about this topic that I know they're passionate about. But then also too, making other friends. Like I referenced, you know, we have people that we know like in South Africa that listen to the show, people in Korea, people in Ireland. Like those people have come onto the episode, and it's kind of, I love that element to it where it's not like
We're the artist and you're the fan and whatnot, right? So go buy my supplements at Infowars.com kind of thing.
It's not that. It's just like, oh, okay, like Copper Kelly, like he's our buddy from Ireland. It's like, hey, you like Slipknot? Like, tell us what it was like growing up with Slipknot in Ireland, and like, let's talk about this album. Or he wants to jump on and talk about Skinwalker Ranch with us, like later on down the line. And like, speaking of part twos, like if there's ever a part two, and I'm just like, yeah, sure. And to me, like that element of it, like that family element, like that's cool. And we kind of touched on it before we started recording here, where I don't want to get too big where it becomes a job. Where like I gotta mail out T-shirts, I gotta mail out stickers, I gotta make sure I do this, that, or other. I gotta go take a flight down to Austin and go do the Joe Rogan experience, which I mean would be cool, but like I don't want to like get into it to where like it becomes something outside of a hobby and more of a job. So if possible, like we can just make the podcast just better, but like not too better to where like we're like, hey dude, like this is now I have to put this on my tax return now because kind of thing. I gotta pay taxes on this podcast. Like we're not trying to do that, but at the same time, like make
You just gotta get an accountant.
yeah,
Get an accountant, and you'll.
Well, I am the accountant. I went to
Bro,
school for that.
Bro, you're gonna be spending at that point. You'll be like, oh, this is my. So one thing in comedy, they have you can put on your taxes, but you got to make money at a level that I've not nowhere close to make. But so what comedians will do, and you'll see like a lot of rappers do as well, is that and when they go to court, they'll call their personas, their characters, and so they'll be like, oh, I'm not
Like Alex Jones.
yeah, so or like myself, I would be like, oh, I'm Iceberg, and everybody knows me as the fly guy, right? So I got to have all this gear, and so you can discount it on your taxes. It's considered wardrobe.
That's
jerseys.
I buy a lot of
You just-
jerseys.
you just-
The jersey
You
thing.
can do prizes. You can do all that. All that shit's like you guys could go out to eat and shit and call it a business meeting and shit.
The jersey thing is kind of a funny thing because I don't know if anyone even on YouTube knows it, but like I've been wearing jerseys as this like running. I don't even know if it's like a running gag or something. But
I've never really paid attention to what you guys are wearing.
Well, he just wears like
'Cause it's always just
regular
like-
clothes, but like I've kind of started wearing a different jersey to like every recording or whatever. And
Yeah.
then I don't even know
expensive.
why. I don't even know why you do that anymore. But yeah.
Anyways, but as far as
It's
like
your- it's
what
from your Sábado Gigante days, bro.
Sábado
You're
Gigante,
like, I gotta switch it up every fucking every week.
I don't know. I like sports, but it's funny because like we rarely talk about sports besides like the sports episodes, and our Patreon would be like, oh dude, the Clippers just fucking like committed suicide. The entire team did, but like it's I don't know why that happens, but as far as like what I would want out of the podcast, like I think we're already doing what I want. Like I want it to be fun. I want it to not feel like a job. I want it to just like I just want to show up and have a good time for like the hour and a half that we record or 2 hours or whatever it is. And I think as far as that element goes, I think we've been pretty successful. Like there's been episodes in like, there was a time period, I think, where to me, it felt a little bit dull. Like it was becoming a little too regimented. Like, and like, I didn't know how to like, I remember telling this dude, like, I just don't want it to feel like a job. I just want it to feel natural. I want it to feel loose. Like I want it to just show up and have a good time. Kind of like this, like there's no plan, there's no notes in front of us. Like I just want to show up and like let our personalities like come through the microphone. And I think that we've gotten better and better at that, as like, not to just be like off the wall and be like, we're talking about, Jeffrey Dahmer, all of a sudden we're like, oh dude, like so and so farted, and that turns into like a whole side tangent. I think we did that too much at some point. Now I think we're good about like, staying on track and still showing our personalities. And like, it took us like 100 episodes to figure that out, but I think we're getting better at it. I think we're kind of, in my opinion, I think we're already where I want to be, which is like having a good time.
I think as like an observer myself, because I've been on a couple podcasts, and I've had my own podcast, but I know there's something about just like watching a podcast. And when I watch a podcast or I listen to a podcast, I do sometimes start catching that they're like, personalities are changing, their dynamics changing, sometimes for the better. Other times you're just kind of like I used to listen to this Raider guy, and he was one of the first when I was doing comedy. I just sent him, and then which was what I'm doing now, and people respond. They're like, yeah, I don't know you, I'll show up at your house and shit. Like, and so
I low key was just like, I hope he's not gonna offer us like a drink like Jeffrey Dahmer, and all of a sudden like my family's gonna find like my kidney like by the bluffs or some shit. But I'm like, he's on my Instagram, so he can't be that bad,
I figured someone you knew would know me eventually, somebody. And I was like, someone has to know.
Probably
like,
Ben or Monica.
So I know for myself, the people I've asked over, I've either like observed them for some time to know, like, I don't think they're weird. Because that's what all the people I've invited to be on here is all people from IG. But I'm going to go off on a tangent. You watch people, and sometimes you do see like the show's changing, and you're like kind of like, oh, I don't like that part about that show, man. Like, what the fuck? And so this Raiders one I used to listen to, the dude would talk stats, and I've never really liked sports that much, or where I just liked the Raiders, and I'd watch Raiders games. And so I never really cared about names and stats. And so when I was listening to this dude, like the way he broke it down of like how he would say like, oh, everybody's talking trash about Carr, but if you look at this number and you look at this, he's actually doing well. We're just like, as a whole team, we're sucking. That's what sucks here. And so I was like, oh, that's a different way to look at it. Like, instead of like, fuck this guy, he should have fucking, ripped his arm off trying to do this or some shit.
Hey, fuck, if we're in fucking East Bakersfield, I would have fucking buried him in the orchards with a Jamie, Like,
Jamie his ass. And so I just kind of like, that's kind of sucks. I feel like, oh man, like I don't want the show to change. Do you guys get comments from people telling you guys like, oh, don't do that segment or do this segment?
Me, not so much. I'll just get random things. It'll be like, can you guys talk about like some weird thing, like can you guys cover the Brazilian Holocaust or something like that? And I'm like, nah. But as far as like I like this, I like that, he probably gets more of that.
Yeah. So I do all like whenever you message Art and Jacob Do America, like wherever, you're talking to me. And so like I'll get that stuff too. So like it's no secret like we both like politically lean left.
We're a couple libertards, as you can tell. Bunch of soy boys over here.
But it's weird because we'll get political on stuff, and for a most part, like when we get political, the majority of the listeners that we get for like those political episodes a majority of those listeners are like very conservative, like from the total opposite end of the spectrum or whatever, right?
I wouldn't say you guys sound. I'm conservative. You know, I wouldn't say like off the bat. I would think you guys were like liberals or anything.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe it's the Bakersfield in us coming out. I don't know. But we'll get like the blowback or whatever from it, and it'll end up just being like a conversation, like a friendly conversation, like which I think is healthy. Like where it's just like, well, this is why I feel the way I feel. Why do you feel the way you feel? Oh, okay. Well, that's understandable. And I think that's another good thing about the podcast. Instead of like people just like living in, stuck with their heels stuck in the sand kind of thing. Like we learn from each other by having conversations. It doesn't always have to be a debate or, us going at each other's throat. Like, no, you're dumb because this fucking happened or whatever kind of thing. It's just like, well, okay, I can see why you would think that. Like for example, we did an episode about guns. It was a part 2 to an earlier episode called The Gun Show. And, obviously they're like, you guys don't know shit about guns. I'm like, yeah, no shit. Because I grew up in East Bakersfield where if you had a gun, you were either a police officer or you were a gang member. There's no reason to own a gun in East Bakersfield unless you were one of those two things. Now, my cousin, he moved out of East Bakersfield to Montana. Now he lives in Idaho, right? Out in, the where you need a gun because the grizzly bear might fucking break down your door and fuck you like Leonardo DiCaprio, which makes sense. Or, their pastime like on Sundays now is like going out and hunting and whatnot, which makes way more sense than it does, in like the city or whatnot, right? And so when you break it down like that and you have those kind of conversations, you get to see from different perspectives of where people are coming from, as opposed to be like, no, you're dumb because you want to take away all of our guns. You want to eradicate the Second Amendment. And it's like, no, I don't. Like, I just, think that if you live like in Skid Row, LA, like you don't need to have an what is it? Fucking M16 or whatever. Like that. It doesn't make sense for that scenario, but it might make sense in, West Texas or East Texas or something,
I think that's one of my favorite things and why I've always enjoyed the podcast. I think you asked me earlier like how I got into podcasting, and I talked about Canoodle Studios and getting invited to do other people's podcasts just by being on the radio. But I actually remember now, back when I was in college, I had a friend. We would drive around sometimes just because we were bored, but I didn't have a radio. I let this tweaker try to install this stolen radio, and it just I got duped, you know what I mean? I just got jacked. And then so the stupid shit wouldn't work. And so at one point I took it out, and then it was just wired so fucked up that I just kind of just gave up on it and left it. So whenever me and my friend would be cruising, we would have to talk because there's no radio. So we're constantly talking about shit. And it got to the point where one time he was like, we should be recording this shit, bro. We always said crazy ass shit. We should be recording it. So we recorded it one day. And so we recorded it, and we went off like on a tangent. And then he was like the first dude. This is way back in the day. This is like before 2010. And so he was like, you just put it on YouTube. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, put it on YouTube. And so I knew what YouTube was, but it wasn't like something I was watching all the fucking time like now. And so he put it up, and I think we liked it, bro. It was kind of funny. We ended up doing like, oh, let's do another one. So we did another episode, and it's somewhere out there, bro. I don't know if he took it down, but it's somewhere out there. But it was, the first one was we're cruising to the mall, and I was just talking about, I was saying some racist shit about Asian people. And then another time we were cruising, and my nephew wanted to go with us, and he was in the back, and I think I went on a tangent about like tying a girl up or something. Like, yeah, you just tie her up, bro, and blah blah blah. And I just said like I was just trying to say some like grunge crazy shit, you know. And then I just realized like I got my nephew in the back. He's like young. I shouldn't be saying this shit. So I just kind of paused it, and I was like, hey, I'm just joking, bro. Like, don't ever do this shit. And so we just ended the episode there.
You were Jamie as soon as his mentor.
Yeah.
That's
But
genius too, yeah.
and so I've always enjoyed talking to different people and trying to just shoot the shit about stuff, because I think even like he's talked about politics. I think sometimes people have a perception of politics. Like for myself, I'm conservative. I would consider myself like a pretty stern Republican. But at the same time, when I meet certain people and they'll be like, "Oh, you're like liberal," and I'm like, "No, you just have a perception of that fucking crazy Republican dude who's just out for votes and, you know, money pockets, and he's saying random fucking shit that don't, like, we don't, as a Republican, you wouldn't believe that shit, you know. You just are. I'll give you an example. So one time, DACA, when DACA came out, right? DACA came out, and they were like, oh, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna try to get people enrolled. And then it became like where like they were gonna close it or something, and people had to apply as fast as they could. And so I was like, oh, I'll go help out with that. And so I went to the United Farm Workers. I used to volunteer for them a long time ago. So I went to go kind of check into all my friends and see how everybody was doing. And then we started talking, and then they were like, there was like younger, newer people working there, right? The older people I knew had gone to headquarters or somewhere else. They had moved up in the world. And so I'm talking to these younger people, and they were like asking me these questions. And then I was talking about, yeah, I knew Robert, and I knew so-and-so, and Fatima, and all these people. And they're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then they kind of paused, and they were like, wait. Because I think I had said something about the Republican Party or something Republican, and they're like, "Oh, wait, if you're Republican, why do you want to help us?" And I was like, "Huh?" And they were like, "Why would you want to help us?" And I was like, "Why wouldn't I help you? Like, I don't understand your question." And they're like, "Well, because you're a Republican, why would you help Democrats?" And I was like, "This isn't about Republican or Democrats. This is that I have a stance on the proper way to immigrate here. They didn't follow that. But now that they're trying to follow a different method, and it's legal, and we've voted on it, and even though maybe the majority of one party doesn't like it, we still have to work together when we pass shit. You can't just like be so on your side and then we don't ever get any progress on things. Like, you win some, you lose some. And so to me, in my mind, I was like, helping someone with DACA wasn't like being a hypocrite. To me, it's like, no, this is a means for them to do the shit that I wasn't happy about in the first place. So why wouldn't I help them? Why wouldn't I make them aware of it? I went out of my way to tell them how I didn't like the other shit they did. So why not inform them of this other shit? And so then like, yeah. So, but they still go like, but you still don't like that they're here, right? And I'm like, not like that. You know, it's more just like, I can see the flaws in that system, and those flaws in the system make me think that we should take care of that problem. You know, it has nothing against certain people in need and shit like that, but. And I'm known people to do the opposite too. That, like, I remember I had a conversation. Oh, and that's another tangent. But, so things like that. That's why I've always liked having like conversations with people, and long ones too. Like even the episode here, like when we talk, usually the first hour is just kind of random conversation, but the second hour is like more like learning about that person's personality, learning more about. I'm never gonna go 3 hours though. I did that once with one chick, and I was just like, oh man.
Well, I guess we're married now.
Just gonna move in and just do all the episodes.
I do think like when we first start, we usually start with like our Patreon, and we start to let loose during the Patreon. And there's been moments where like we don't agree on something, and it can get a little bit like you know, tense or whatever. But for the most part, we agree on things politically, like But I mean, there's every once in a while there's like a little thing that's just like we just don't agree. We don't see eye to eye on something, but it's very rare. I've always wanted to, like, when we talk about this all the time of like seeing a conservative perspective in some of the things that we cover, we never really get to bring in someone that's willing to come on, and not because it's. I think a lot of times there's always that fear of like, oh, you're just gonna have me on to like. Roast me or make me try to sound stupid or something like that, and it's never been like that. To me, it's never been like that. Like, I legitimately, I think most people. We were just talking about the homeless situation. Like, homelessness in California has exploded. Like, it's over the top, and I think it doesn't matter if you're like the most liberal person or the most conservative person. I think I think we both acknowledge that there's an issue there and it needs to be solved. Like, what, you know. Where we come at it from, like, that's gonna be the difference. And like, I'm just, for me, and I think everyone just wants the problem solved. Like, immigration is an issue. You know, it's an issue. That, you know,
yes,
whatever
it is.
whether you know, whatever you feel about it, you know, conservative point or a liberal point. You know, there's people that are like way more liberal than me that are just like, take down the borders, and they're just like, let everybody in. And something like, that seems a little too liberal, but like, like, you know, and then there's the more conservative people that are like, no, like, build the fucking Berlin Wall and like don't let anybody in like unless their like name is Donald Trump or whatever. Like that's it. That's like the only dude that's a welcome in or type. So you know it gets a little too polarizing to the point where it's like sometimes in the middle there's that correct answer that we can both find common ground on and like work as the United States of America.
I think what we touched on before was kind of how you're raised can influence how you think and your perception of certain things and how they are. And I think it's the same with politics, where people on both sides, they're the people who get the stage time are the people on the fucking extremes. Someone's knocking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, babe. Oh, come in. It's fine. Whatever. I'll cut it out. All right. Thank you, babe.
Yeah, if you call him in, he's gonna stay here.
Okay. Oh, I'm good, dude. Actually, I have to. I'm holding pee right now, so.
Oh, we'll take a break.
Oh no, it's cool. No, like I'm at that point where it's like I can hold this.
No, I mean, we can take a break and go
No,
restroom.
let's keep it going.
All right.
Yeah, because if I pee, then I'm like, all right, guys, you guys ready to party?
Oh, you break the seal and whatever they call it.
But I guess like to go down that point, like my growing up, the reason why I politically lean the way I do is because I've gotten to see like both sides of it. So like my grandma on the Aryan side, I guess you could say, right? My grandma's like, she's from Canada, right? Like was born and raised there, and then she married my grandfather, and they came to the U.S. Like he was in the military and whatnot, and they came to the U.S. and moved to L.A. And then my dad's side, they're from Mexico, right? So I got to see like both sides of like the immigration process or whatever. And the immigration process for like my grandma, who like never became a citizen, like she became like a manager of a bank, like she was like, like this pillar of society or whatnot, right? And like she was like, yeah, like things just seemed to come naturally to me, like it just fell out of the sky. It was like whistling Dixie, whatever, right? And I always just assumed like she was a citizen, right? And she got cancer, and she was like, man, like I need to get this special type of treatment or I'm gonna fucking die. And so she's like, I hate to do this, but I gotta move back home because Canada has better healthcare system than the United States. And then like everybody was like, well, that's only for citizens of Canada. And she goes, oh yeah, I've never given up my Canadian citizenship. Like I'm not a citizen of America. Like I was always just a resident. And we're like, what? And then on the flip side of it, like my dad, like all like super Mexican or whatever, right? Insert like desperado music here, right? They very much like tried to get like citizenship. Like we're just like pretty much begging for it, right? Like did everything the hard way. Like, his mom, he would talk about how like she had to go to work at like the fields, but then also too had to like go to what's it called? Tribal lands and whatnot, like Native American. So his dad's like full-fledged like a Native American, and that's how him and his dad and mom and dad met or whatever, right? I guess my grandpa, but like very much like had to like just blood, sweat, and tear like grind it out kind of thing. Like even for himself, like my dad from the time he was 15 till he was 60 something years old, like busted his ass like in the oil fields, like literally busting his back or whatever, and was a fortunate, I think, ripe old age of like 60 something was granted citizenship. And I was like, damn, that's fucked up. Like, so you get to see like all these different sides of the coins. Like, I know people don't like to acknowledge this, but like, yeah, white privilege very much does exist or whatever, right? And then like there is like a situation where like this country, for whatever reason, whatever your feeling might be, like things just seem to be a little bit harder for like minorities than they should be. And that's like kind of like I see things like that and I'm like, man, like we got to make better changes. Like insert, that Michael Jackson song, Man in the Mirror or whatever, right? And I think when I look at like, Art said this once and it's really resonated with me, where like I don't identify as Democrat because it's like, yeah, Democrats have let me down just as much as like a Republican has. But like I'll definitely say like I'm progressive or liberal just because like the thoughts and ideas that seem right to me jive more that way than they do on the right, because I'm not a millionaire. Like I I don't think that Jeff Bezos shouldn't pay any taxes when my mom over here, who's busting her ass like 80 hours a week, has to pay like all the taxes. Like that's something in the system just doesn't jive well on that. So,
And I think coming from my conservative thoughts, it's a lot of things have to do with how you're raised, giving you certain perception, and like you mentioned, the way I see white privilege, it's not like a barcode or a membership or something, right?
by the way, I'm still waiting for my membership card.
It's more of I had conversations with my stepdad about money that I never had with my father, and he was my stepdad was he owned his own business, a construction company. He's from Texas, white guy, very conservative. My father, I think he was a Democrat, very old school dude, Catholic, never had any really deep conversations about money with me. He would have conversations about hard life, racism, how he dealt with racism, just like kind of like how I ended up in my environment, like conversations about that. But my stepdad, he would talk about money like different, bro. It was just a way of like, it was a game, and it's like, how do you fuck with it to double it, or how do you fuck with it to, and like kind of like the game, like you play Pogs, you play Pogs and you start getting into it, and you're like, how do I get more Pogs, or what can I use so that I can take more Pogs, and then like, oh, and then also, who plays Pogs? That fucker can't ever keep his Pogs. I'm gonna play that fucker, So you start learning shit, and you get into it kind of like a game. And I remember he would, to go off on a tangent about him, one time he was talking about, he used to do bids, and he would bid on a construction. He would do big ones, like $1 million, $1 billion ones and shit. And so I might be exaggerating about the billion one. I think it was 1.3 billion. I could be wrong though. But anyways, it was a gymnasium. So that sounds like a lot for a gymnasium. Anyways.
It was SoFi.
Right, and that was actually a high school one in Brawley.
Oh wow.
In Imperial Valley. But anyways, it might have been 1.3 million, something like. Anyways, it was a lot of fucking money. But the way he talked about it, when he went do those bids, he would talk about how he does the math and how his strategy of how to get the prices that he would get. And then if he lost where someone bid lower than him, he wouldn't just be like, "Oh, I got beat." He would go over to the table and grab the envelope and look at how their cost was and how they got their total, and he could say like, okay, this is where they're gonna lose fucking money. They're gonna lose money. They didn't even think about the installation of this shit, and new policies are out there that they didn't even take into consideration. They're gonna lose all kinds of fucking money here. Like, go take the fucking job. You fucked it up already. He took joy in that shit. And so I think sometimes when people think about white privilege, they think of like, oh, like it's a membership or something. But no, it's just like really subtle things that you grow up with that you don't, like even like business, like the way my parents talked about, they own businesses. They're pretty much practically everybody in my family owns some type of small business. And so when you grow up with stuff like that, you think about things a lot different. So I think that's what like my conservativeness, like I would consider myself conservative, is just kind of coming from my parents owning businesses, and then wanting to go to school and just try to get ahead and shit. But as I was doing that, there was things that I was like, fuck, I wish I knew about a savings account, or I knew about index funds and shit like that. I didn't really understand those things. And there's people who are set up with that, and they don't, it's like second nature to them where they keep their money. Like I've met people who tell me like their parents set up a pretty much like a 401k for them, but it's not set up as a 401k. It's set up as like their individual stock ownings, and so they that's how they get their money. They every month they get their dividends, and then they try not to spend over their dividends so that their money lasts and stuff. But we're never taught that shit. We're not even taught our taxes, and even like being conservative and having the background I have, I can listen to liberals sometimes and I just laugh at them. And I'm not laughing at them because, oh, they're fucking liberals and they're stupid, It's more just, I don't mean to point at you after you're talking about liberal.
I've had people try to fight me, so I can deal with a point. Man.
So my point was, is that like I'll listen to them and I'm like, they don't get it. Like they don't get it. And if you want to argue about that, you can have it. Oh, we lost it. Like, but we didn't lose anything. You just didn't know what you were fighting for. People always talk. My biggest topic that I tell people is like, they're like, oh, let's raise the taxes on the wealthy. Oh, we raised the Biden's gonna raise the taxes on the wealthy, and you're like you don't get it. Like, you don't hear Trump talking about how he doesn't pay taxes. So what are you talking about that you're going to raise the taxes? It don't matter what you raise it to. They're just going to have their friends are going to pass little shit so that they can move their money a different way. And you're never going to see it. All those things happen that they tax is people that don't know their money. People who are rich for no fucking reason, you know, like let's say Joe Rogan, you know, gets all that money. He doesn't know he doesn't know what to do with it. He doesn't ever gets an accountant. He doesn't really do much, right? He just lets it stack up in a bank account. And so he's not handling his money a certain way. So yeah, he's making a million, 200 million a year, and he's paying crazy fucking taxes. And he's like, yeah, man, fuck all that shit. Fuck taxes. And it's just like, nah, fool, you need to get an accountant. Your accountant's going to handle all that shit for you. He's going to move all your money. He'll tell you. And once you talk to him, he'll tell you, and going from now on, this is what you need to do. Like, my nephew owns a business, and you're like, oh, he'd probably like, fuck, I'd be worried about what I spend, and like, I can't let this business fail. And then he goes and sees my accountant, and my accountant's like, you need to spend another $40,000. Like, find $40,000 to spend. And it's like, what? It's like, I spend $40,000. We'll call it a cost for your business. We can then put it on your taxes, and then that reduces. And so instead of just paying taxes, you paid your taxes by buying more shit for your business, which is going to give you capital. Capital.
Yeah, and I get all that too, because like I went to school. Like that's originally what I went to school for, was like, you know, accounting and all that stuff, just because like that's who made all the money, right? Like you watch like VH1's like Behind the Music or whatever.
I got an A in accounting.
Yeah, I did too. Like I have 2 degrees in it, but like my whole thing was just like, that's how, you know, I want to get out of the hood, right? Like, so I got to find a job
that's the biggest lie too that they tell us. Our parents are like, my dad was like, learn about computers and go to school and go to college and get education. That was there was a stint where that was true, but now it's like,
well, you just talked about it on our
you need
Patreon.
a hustle. You need something to make money. Like it seems like anybody I know now who isn't fucking pushing carts got 3, 4, 5 fucking different things they got to do now to make a living, to make their rent.
Yeah, like I mean, it doesn't, like we were talking on an episode we just recorded, like the path that we grew up with is no longer the path that's gonna, you know, guarantee like a nice little middle class life. But I guess like the original point, like I was gonna say, is like, yeah, like that's originally why I got into like accounting, was because like you watch VH1's Behind the Music, and like, yeah, like everyone strives to be like, you know, Motley Crue or Bon Jovi or Aerosmith or MC Hammer or whatnot, right? Like these glamorous like rock stars and whatnot, right? And live like that rock star lifestyle. Even like O.J. Simpson, like his story and whatnot, right? But the guys like that run fucking L.A. are lawyers, accountants, all these motherfuckers or whatever, right? And I think like the sad thing is like, we were just talking about this on the Patreon, is like people want to live like the Instagram lifestyle, and you know, they put themselves in debt to get to that lifestyle. But like when you look at like truly successful people, like say what you will about like Mark Zuckerberg, like he's basically the robot that's gonna kill all of humanity or whatever, right? But like he doesn't like walk outside of his house like in fucking Versace fucking silk fucking pajamas and shit. Like he's dressing probably the same way I'm dressing right now. Like
he's buying out UFC fights.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, he's the whole arena or whatever, right? But he could do that at that point. But I don't know. Like I feel like there's the smart money element too, but then there's also the humanity of it too. And I think that's why I got out of it, of accounting, because it was like you said, it was all a game. And yeah, that game might work for, you know, a Donald Trump or, you know, a billionaire or whatever, but like you look at the human element of it too, where it's just like, I see it every day, like in my job, where it's just like people think that they're playing the game right, and from their 20s all the way up until like when they turn 60, they're like everything's all good kind of thing, right? Not to put too much of it out there so I don't get in trouble, but like then it comes time to where it's like, oh shit, like I can no longer work, or I can't do this anymore, and then they come to my place of work, place of establishment or whatever, and like, all right, take care of me, government. It's like, well, you didn't pay into any of this, so there's nothing, so we can't help you because you didn't help everybody else by, you know, contributing your fair share. So to me, like, there's always that yin and yang. Like, yeah, you can ball out and, you know, play the game and whatnot and God bless you. I hope that works out for you and whatnot. But a lot of the sad thing is like more people than not, they strive for that. And like you were talking about, like with your stepdad, like those are unicorns. A lot of those people, like they don't exist on every street corner. Yeah, there might be a couple here in Bakersfield or whatever, but a lot of them are striving for that, but they're not that successful at it. And then like when it comes time in their later stages of their years or whatnot, and I see it every single day, where it's just like, oh shit, you cheated the game for quote unquote, and like now your karma's coming back to you, if you will. And it's hard to explain it without getting into too much details or whatever. But I think like life is all about like a balance and whatnot, right? Like you can't keep chasing like that carrot down the hole. To me, because like me becoming like a millionaire tomorrow, is that going to change a lot of my problems? It'll solve a lot of like my financial problems, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I don't have any financial problems, but like I'll get all the Jordans that I ever wanted and shit like that. But at the end of the day, like what matters most to me is like making sure like everybody in my life is taken care of, and making sure, you know, that humanity as a whole like is doing well. Like to me, like that matters more than like becoming the next Mark Zuckerberg or whatever. Like I'm not interested in being a unicorn. I'd rather be just like a cool ass fucking cat. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't give a fuck about anything else like that.
I'd like to get to a point. I mean, not necessarily like with successful in certain things, but definitely whatever I'm doing that makes me happy, having enough money to just do random shit all the time. Just like get up and do shit. Like be very free, you know. Upgrade my chick. Nah, just kidding. Nah, she left. My
girl doesn't do that.
That's good. That's a blessing right there.
me and my
We've been doing this podcast for 5 years. My girl has not once came in and gave us chimichangas or